Hi, everyone. This is Jeffrey Sykes. I'm here with my dear friend and longtime collaborator, Stephanie Jutt. We are having our little interview today for our Box Lunch series. This is the first time I've interviewed Stephanie in this kind of a way, so it's kind of interesting to have this sort of a conversation with you. So, Stephanie, how are you? What have you been up to? What have you been doing?
Hi, Jeff. I have been very busy almost this entire time. It seems like every day flies by somehow or another. And I have to say, I've been really spending a lot of time with my family. We had some sort of crisis situations early in the pandemic where my daughter Francesca is a nurse at St. Luke's Hospital, and she was was an emergency room nurse. She's out of the emergency room now, but at the time she had to send her husband and baby away to stay in another apartment downtown. This is in New York, of course, to keep them away from her, basically. And so for, gosh, about 6 weeks, her husband and son were living in this other place, and my son, Trace, her brother, drove up from Florida with his girlfriend and stayed in that same apartment to help take care of the baby. It was a very complicated situation because my daughter's husband has parents who live in Stamford, Connecticut, and he was driving back and forth every day because one of them was sick, and he was in full-time school. So it was like this critical mass, and I was kind of going between both places, playing triage really between both households. It was a very strange experience because I was alone here in the apartment in New York, in my apartment, and here were these guys like kind of fighting out all these battles, and me cooking as much food and delivering it to people. And it was like that kind of a 6-week period until Francesca got out of the emergency room and moved home back, and the guys moved back home with the family, and things got a little bit more normal. And then I could really think a little bit more about, myself and what would I like to do, which hadn't really come up until then. But, you do what you have to do. And things in New York were so dire for so long. And, we were just terrified, really. But after that was over, the cooking has certainly continued. And now I have my son, Trace, and his girlfriend are living with me for the summer. And so it's really fantastic. We all get along really well, amazingly, at least so far. And we all love being outside so much. So we give each other a lot of space, and I think everything's working really well. And of course, we have lots of musical things to look forward to because my son is a marvelous cellist now, and I just love playing with him. And it's just a treat, So we'll see, we're getting through it for sure.
Well, it's, you're in ground zero for all of this. That's where you're living. And, more than anybody I know, you've had a very complicated situation. I mean, it really has been back and forth and just this constant thing going on for you. And I think that in other parts of the country, people can't appreciate what you have to do because they don't have to go through that kind of thing as nearly as much as you have had to do. And it takes time. It takes all your time and all your thought, doesn't it?
Yeah, because you have to stay so organized and disciplined, I would say. Luckily that comes second nature to most musicians. And so, you just get up every day and you do what you have to do. And I think I was joking to you about my former student who was a nun in a cloistered convent. And she said she had no sympathy for anybody because every day is like that for her. So she said, she gets up every day and makes her bed and gets busy. So I really tried to have that attitude, that I'm so lucky to be healthy and I have enough money and I can pay the rent and I can do what I need to do, and I'm not, like in a ditch somewhere. So I'm thrilled to still be a musician. I know things are going to come together in the future. You know, we just have to be tough. We got to be tough.
Yeah, got to be tough. And you know, we're very fortunate in so many ways. I mean, we're fortunate. We come from relatively privileged backgrounds compared to so many people. There are so many things that we don't have to face that many other citizens have to face on a daily basis, and we're lucky. We're just lucky that way.
And I just, you know, really try to stay in that frame of mind. You know, that we are so lucky. And that we're lucky that we're not really super old too, because we're going to live through this and we're going to come out on the other side. And
Right.
you know, not everybody can say that. So I feel very happy about that too.
So talk to me more about music. What music have you been turning to? You mentioned a little bit of playing music with Trace. What music have you been turning to either play or to listen to? And what about books and movies, things like that?
It's been such a feast, right? I mean, it's hard to even pick every day. There was the entire New York City Ballet spring season, in which they put up all kinds of fabulous, you know, archived performances, a whole Balanchine festival, a whole, you know, just like a big Jerome Robbins section. It's stuff that I just adore. Then, of course, there was all the Met Opera broadcasts. And you and I both watched those free high-def broadcasts. There were so many good ones. And that was such a treat to see. I got to see the whole Ring cycle again. That was great. And then the Berlin Philharmonic, you know, they had all that stuff that was up. I watched the whole Mahler series that they put on. And it's really, I mean, it's been just an embarrassment of riches, I have to say, for watching performances. And then, of course, all my friends are posting things and we're making our series. And so there's been plenty to look at. As far as sort of the theatrical things go, I guess I went on a kind of a Helen Mirren jag and watched all kinds of performances that Helen Mirren has performed in, starting with her 7-year stint as a detective on the show Prime Suspect. Oh my God, that was so fabulous.
So
and
good.
I watched 2 movies where she plays Catherine the Great. Once when she was really young, and once when she was older, and she was equally fabulous in both of those. So I saw those. Let's see what else. Oh, I went on a Pedro Almodovar festival too. Since Trace's, that's my son's girlfriend is Cuban, we are watching all kinds of things in Spanish, like Pan's Labyrinth and these Almodovar movies and other things in Spanish. And I'm taking a big Spanish course. It's very intensive. So it's good for me to see movies in Spanish. And I listen to a radio show called The News in slow Spanish, which is really helpful. And listening to the songs of the great Silvio Rodriguez, who is the Cuban singer-songwriter who was like a national hero of Cuba, who I met and had dinner with, and his wife was my host in Havana. Gosh, it seems like a lifetime ago, but it was just in December. So it's been really fun. And I'm reading, well, you know I'm reading The Whale because we're both reading that together, but I also read this memoir by Oliver Sacks, highly recommended, On the Move. It's his memoir for all of you Oliver Sacks lovers. And also a book of, well, I guess you could call them essays, short-ish writings by David Foster Wallace, Consider the Lobster. Very funny, wonderful, amazing guy. I'm crazy about his writings. So that's kind of what I've been reading aside from like daily lengthening trips into the New York Times, because I ordered it every day. I get it every day in paper.
Wow.
So I felt like I really wanted to support journalism. So I bought the paper every day, and that's a job in itself, right? To read the paper, at least that paper. So we're busy.
Yeah, you're kind of busy, it sounds like. So talk to me about music. What have you been listening to in terms of and playing? yourself. You've been playing, obviously, and what have you chosen to play for us?
Well, there's some things that I've always wanted to have time to play and work on, and that is the kind of stuff that I've been doing. I mentioned this in an earlier talk that we had, that I love to just fool around on my instrument and try and make unique sort of sounds. And there's a composer named Ian Clark, a British composer. If anybody's interested, they could listen to his recordings. An incredible flute player and composer. And he thought of all these really neat fingerings to make fantastic different colors on the flute that I've gotten into. And he has a lot of compositions. So I've been looking at his music really seriously. And I've also been playing concerts in the stairwell. There's a stairwell outside my door that goes to, like the trash. But it connects to up and down the stairwell to all the different floors, right? So I have had a number of unaccompanied flute concerts for my neighbors in the stairwell. And I just put up a little sign on, near the elevator that I'm going to do it. And they bring their lawn chairs out, or their tiny room chairs, and sit in the stairwell and listen to me play through a whole mess of unaccompanied flute music. So I've stayed in really good shape, I have to say, and probably the most important composer for all of our musicians, including me, has been Bach. And there's just no end to how much satisfaction and I don't know, I guess insight and philosophy and hopefulness and despair and high spirits and super low spirits that you can get from playing Bach. And I found a resource of a book of transcriptions of the cello suites by Bach. So I've been playing through those a lot because I've never had studied them. I've heard them all my life, but I've never studied them. So that's been really great. And then a flutist put out a compilation of all kinds of pieces by Bach that came from keyboard pieces, violin pieces, all different kinds of pieces, and made them in arrangements for flute. So I've played a lot of those just for fun, and it's just so rewarding. You can never get tired of it. But I like Harmeet's idea of listening to the motets. That's something I have not done. I haven't listened to the Passions or the motets, and I have to get into those.
They're pretty remarkable. You'll like it. You won't regret.
Yeah. I know I won't.
Now talk to me a little bit about transcribing Bach. I mean, it's interesting you found this book of transcriptions of the cello suites. I would have thought that the violin sonatas and partitas would be a much more natural, instantaneous kind of fit for the flute. But is that not so, or is it what's the deal
there might be a book of transcriptions out there from the violin pieces. I just don't have it. So I'm not so sure that the cello's transcriptions are any better than the violin transcriptions would be. I don't know. I think for most wind players, we know the cello suites more for some reason. I think they're so famous. I mean, starting from Pablo Casals till now, as when I first learned about Bach, I was a little girl, and it was those Pablo Casals recordings of the cello suites. So I guess I've been listening to them since I was about 5 or so. And they were really popular because my dad liked the record so much, he bought it. And so, we mostly had jazz records and, Nina Simone and the Everly Brothers and not the Everly Brothers.
Anita
O'Day. But, we didn't have a lot of classical recordings, but we had those cello suites. So I guess I always felt I knew them. And then, of course, my son's a cellist, so I've heard them a lot. And so I think I don't know how I even got this book. I think a student brought it to me because it's all the writing is in Chinese. So I don't think it was published here. But the music that I'm going to play for you today is some of the stuff that I played out in the stairwell. It's the only piece that Bach wrote for, the only sonata that he wrote for unaccompanied flute. And if you've ever tried to play Baroque flute, it's quite difficult, some of this. It's written in the key of A minor, which is a really good key, even for a Baroque flute, not the most complicated of keys on that instrument, but it has extremes of dynamics and range that is very unusual for a Baroque flute piece. So I've studied it a lot over the years. Of course, it's another piece that I've been playing since I was, 15 years old or something. And it never gets old. And I always think, gee, should I do this? Should I do that? Like today I'm going to do this, tomorrow I'm going to do that, and they're all the choices are good. So you really have so much flexibility and never tire of it. So I hope you enjoy those two movements from that sonata.
Well, I know we will. I've had the pleasure of hearing them already, so I know that we will enjoy them.
Thanks.
And it's interesting with Bach's music. I think his music has been transcribed more than anybody else's music, and for the craziest things. I remember hearing this recording in school of Bach transcribed for the Moog synthesizer. I don't know if you ever heard that. And it sounded great. I mean, it's music that sounds good no matter what is playing it, because the music itself is so good.
Yeah, that's making me remember that Stas, our friend Stas Benglevsky, plays one of the toccata in fugues on the bayan. And that might be a great thing for us to put on some other time, because he's fabulous at that. I mean, to hear him play this gigantic organ piece on the bayan, which is, of course, all you guys out there, it's a Russian accordion. It's pretty thrilling, and it's so unusual. Yeah. But it works. They all work.
They all work. They all work. I mean, there are these great transcriptions that famous pianists have done. I mean, at the piano, we have no shortfall of pieces by Bach that were written for the keyboard, none whatsoever. But many famous pianists have transcribed things from the cello suites and the violin sonatas and partitas, including a really great transcription that Brahms did for the left hand alone of the chaconne, the Bach chaconne, famous Bach chaconne. And it's amazing in these other versions. I mean, when a great transcriber does it, it sounds pretty amazing, because the music itself is so amazing.
Right. Oh, that would be so very cool. That's very cool, Jeff. Well, thank you. Yeah. I'm sure that I'm going to be finding more pieces for flute and cello. That's what I'm going to be looking for next, so that I can do some more work with Trace. We might as well have fun, right?
You're lucky enough to be sequestered with another musician. Mm-hmm. So you've got another musician in the family right there. You should, make hay while the sun does shine.
Well, we will.
Well, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much. And thank you for your beautiful music. I look forward to talking to you again very soon.
You bet.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.